They say mirrors never lie, but what if they're rehearsing? What if reflections can be taught to forget? I was sent to inspect a forgotten estate tied to a woman the world worships. What I found beneath it wasn't just hidden, it was practiced. Mirror rooms, children in trance, and a voice that speaks in symbols. Devotion, chalice, harvest. This isn't a memory, it's a pattern. And if you've ever woken up remembering something that didn't happen, you may have already heard the tempo. Her name is Oprah, and she's been practicing in plain sight. They didn't give me much, just a laminated badge with a one-time clearance code and an address scrawled onto a shipping label like it had been peeled off something else. The voice on the phone, calm, clipped, not quite official, said I was being contracted for a private compliance assessment. No agency name, no scope details, only a warning: report structural anomalies. Do not document contents. No photos, no digital notes. I specialize in code compliance, mostly foundation audits and fire risk assessments, industrial spaces, public buildings, not estates. Not like this. When I pulled up the long, winding road, my headlights cut across a wall of hedges that looked grown from a blueprint, not a leaf out of place. The gate was already open, swinging inward like it had been waiting. The house beyond was massive but subdued, more institutional than residential. Pale walls, high glass, a silence that pressed down harder the closer I got. A man in a charcoal coat stood waiting beneath the archway. He didn't ask for my name, just checked the badge, nodded once and said, "East Wing only, don't drift, no recordings." I didn't even get to ask who lived here. Inside, the air was colder than expected and dry, like it had been filtered too many times. Every footstep echoed. There were no personal items, no art, no signs of habitation, just silence and an architectural sterility that made my skin crawl. He led me down a corridor lined with closed doors. Every few feet, a discreet black lens blinked overhead. Eventually, we stopped outside a tall, unmarked set of double doors. "Library wing," he said. "Focus on foundation walls, eastern corner. If you encounter sealed sections, leave them." And then he left. The doors creaked open on hydraulics, revealing not a library so much as a showroom of one. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, untouched volumes, a spiral staircase curling upward like a sculpture. Everything was immaculate but wrong. Too perfect. No dust, no signs of use. Even the leather-bound books looked curated more than read. I took out my light and started the usual checks. Baseboards, corners, wall seams. No signs of shifting or moisture, just immaculate drywall and sealed joints. Until I reached the far eastern corner. One shelf stood slightly ajar, not visibly, but enough that a breeze tugged at the paper in my hand. I pressed my palm against it. Cold air, drafting from behind. There was no latch, no handle, until I crouched and found a recessed ridge beneath the bottom shelf. It gave with a soft mechanical whine. Behind it, a narrow passage stretched away into darkness. Dry air flowed through it like breath escaping a mouth too long sealed. I paused, radioed in. Static, dead channel. And yet, I stepped inside. I shouldn't have. Every part of me knew that. But I told myself it was just a tunnel, just concrete and air. The walls were narrow, unpainted, and old. Poured cement, probably original to the estate's subfloor. Maybe an old servant corridor or maintenance shaft. That's what I told myself. At the far end, a reinforced metal door stood sealed with a numbered keypad. The screen was cracked, but the latch slid with a sound like teeth grinding together. The room beyond was colder. Dim fluorescent lights buzzed to life as I entered. At first I thought I'd found a storage basement, but then I saw the mirrors. Not one or two, an entire wall, lined from floor to ceiling in uneven, mismatched mirrors. Some cracked, some fogged, some flawless. Across from them were rows of desks, like an old classroom. On the front wall, a blackboard split down the middle. A dead spotlight above the podium flickered on, then steadied, without a sound. I stood there frozen. The mirrors showed my reflection, distorted, elongated, delayed by a half second, like I was being watched, not in real time, but from memory. The air shifted. It was quiet, but too quiet. The kind that makes your ears strain to hear what isn't there. Then I noticed the outlines, chalk shapes on the mirrors, not graffiti, silhouettes, children maybe. Head and shoulders traced on the glass like someone had drawn them in place of their reflections. I took a step back. That's when I heard it. Not footsteps, not speech. Fabric, shifting against stone, behind the podium. I whispered, "Is someone there?" No answer. Just a low creak from the far end of the room, like a chair being pulled back. I didn't wait to find out. I backed away, then ran. By the time I made it back to the tunnel, the panel door had closed behind me. Locked again, like it had never opened. The man in the charcoal coat was waiting. "Any issues?" he asked, watching my face. I swallowed. "Nothing to report." He nodded. "Then you're cleared." I left. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that room, that mirror, that spotlight. So I wrote a note and hid it in my glove box. It said, "Not a basement, not a classroom, something older." And the mirrors don't just reflect. I didn't expect anyone to follow up. Jobs like that usually disappear behind locked folders and non-disclosure lines so tight they may as well be prayers. But 3 days later, I got a knock on my door at 6:12 a.m. Not a call, a knock. The man waiting outside didn't show a badge. He wore a navy windbreaker with a patch I didn't recognize. He didn't ask if I had time to talk. He said, "You found something we need to trace. We're sending you to someone who can help you understand it." He handed me a manila envelope and turned before I could respond. Inside was a burner phone, a prepaid card, and a single photo, a still image from a surveillance feed. It was the room I had seen, but from a different angle. The chalkboard was clean now, but the mirrors, someone had etched a spiral across the center pane. A red spiral, drawn with shaky lines. Beneath it were 2 words, Cycle 5. Something tightened in my chest. That phrase, it wasn't in any architectural code book or audit checklist, but it was familiar, like a word I'd seen in a dream that wasn't mine. The phone buzzed once, a message. "She'll meet you at the diner on Highway 14, noon. Don't be late." Her name wasn't given. She wore dark glasses and a coat too heavy for the weather. We didn't shake hands, just sat across from each other in a booth where the blinds were drawn, and the waitress didn't even glance our way. She placed a flash drive on the table and said, "What you saw wasn't part of the estate's structural blueprint. It was part of something older, an initiative." "What kind of initiative?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "The kind that rehearses memory until it stops resisting." I opened my mouth, but she cut me off. We've seen the cycle phrase before. Cycle 1 through 4 appeared in files overseas, Johannesburg, Geneva, once in Cairo, but cycle 5, that's only been attached to one location, the place you entered. She opened a folder. Inside were printouts of sketches, childlike, crude. Each one showed a girl in front of a mirror. Sometimes she was smiling, sometimes crying, but always the same spiral somewhere in the frame, drawn in the pupil, in a handprint, floating in the corner like a shadow. "We thought they were symbolic," she said. "Coping patterns, maybe," until one of our analysts traced a series of confiscated tapes labeled Playback 5. They weren't therapy sessions. They were performances. I stared at the images, at the spiral burned into every page. "What does it mean?" "It's a loop," she said. "Not a symbol, a command. You enter, you rehearse, you forget. Then you rehearse the forgetting." Later that night, I plugged the flash drive into a secure terminal. No Wi-Fi, no external ports, just playback. The first file was grainy video. A girl, maybe 10, sits in a mirrored room, whispering something I couldn't hear. Her lips moved in a steady rhythm. Her hands tapped her chest 3 times. Then she smiled and said, I remember it differently now. Thank you. The file ended. The second video was worse. A different girl, older. She looked directly into the camera, eyes too wide, too still. I was removed so others could remain, she said. I was the rehearsal. Her reflection moved before she did. I shut the drive and walked outside. I needed air, but the night didn't feel real. The wind had no scent. My own shadow looked delayed, as if I was watching myself from behind glass. I opened my glove box again, pulled out the original note. I added 4 more words. Cycle 5 is alive. The next morning, I received a parcel at my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a sealed folder marked with a sticker I hadn't seen before, an hourglass with no sand. Beneath it, a file labeled Memory Compliance Initiative, Site R, Retention, Confidential, Classification, Spiral Dorm. The folder contained architectural blueprints, subterranean schematics, a room labeled Echo Chamber 4B with a note beside it. Playback integrity pending. Do not disrupt. In the margin, scrawled in handwriting that didn't match anything else. They rehearse gratitude until it replaces memory. That's how they stay quiet. That's when I realized this wasn't about missing children. It was about remembered roles. And someone was keeping score. They told me to stop. Not explicitly, but the message was clear. The burner phone they gave me buzzed once more. A new number. The text said, "Deliver the folder. Do not open anything further." I didn't respond. Instead, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 4 years. She used to be in digital forensics, left after an overseas case that gave her seizures every time a certain pitch rang above 3 kilohertz. She called it audio contamination. I called it PTSD. We both agreed not to talk about it, but now I needed her. We met at a self-storage lot outside the city. No cameras, no forms, just a key passed over coffee. "You're looking into something you shouldn't be," she said, flipping through the flash drive's contents. "And it's not just buried, it's rehearsed out of existence." She paused on a folder labeled Echo Audio, Tier 3. "Have you played any of these out loud?" she asked. I shook my head. "Just visual review." Her lips tightened. "Don't. Not unless you're grounded. These aren't just videos, they're audio-locked rehearsals. Subharmonic loops meant to recondition response states." "Condition how?" I asked. She turned her laptop toward me. A waveform played on screen. No dialogue, just soft pulses, like a heartbeat, one every 3.6 seconds. "I ran it through my distortion scanner," she said. "There's a pattern buried under the base layer. It's not music. It's rhythmic alignment, meant to anchor cognition. Play it long enough, and it bypasses language. Your body starts repeating what it hears, even if you don't understand it." "You're saying it programs people?" She didn't answer, just tapped the keyboard and pulled up a frame from one of the videos. A girl, age uncertain, sits in front of a cracked mirror. She's not speaking, just mouthing. Then I noticed. My own fingers had started tapping. 3 beats, 1 pause, over and over. I forced myself to stop. That night, I dreamt of mirrors, not nightmares, dreams of familiarity. As if I had seen those walls before, sat in those desks, smiled on cue, even woke with the words already in my head. I remember it differently now. Thank you. The next morning, I returned to the estate. Not officially, not with clearance. I used a utility badge and a fake service call ticket. Told the guard I was following up on a circuit anomaly. He didn't ask questions. Just waved me through. The east wing was locked, so I entered through a lower access panel in the maintenance hall. From there, I found the corridor. Narrow, dry, humming faintly. But this time I didn't take the same path. I remembered the blueprints, the folder with the spiral dorm. There had been a second access point, 1 level deeper, marked Room 4B, no external latch, just a wall panel with a magnetic seal. I used the tool hidden in my boot heel, a field key from an old job. It clicked open like it had been waiting. The stairwell beyond was unlike the other tunnel. The walls here were curved, polished, no visible seams. And the air, it pulsed. Not metaphorically, literally. A low vibration that ran just beneath the skin. I followed the curve for what felt like 20 minutes, until the hallway opened into a circular chamber. At the center was a pedestal. On it, a metronome, still ticking. The walls were mirrors again, but these weren't cracked or faded. They shimmered with a glaze that bent light too perfectly. Every movement I made echoed 6 or 7 reflections deep, but not all of them matched. One reflection was wrong. She smiled when I didn't. I stepped back. A voice, young, clear, echoed from nowhere. Rehearsal pending, awaiting playback initiation. I turned toward the sound, but the room was empty. The metronome ticked faster. I saw the spiral again, this time etched into the center of the pedestal. Beneath it, echo room compliance level, tempo tier. My vision blurred, my hands trembled. I left, fast. I don't remember running, only being outside, back in my car, drenched in sweat. The sun had shifted overhead, but the clock on my dash hadn't moved. I pulled over 5 miles out and wrote everything down in a backup journal, penciled it by hand. Then I added one more line. Playback isn't memory, it's direction. The mirror teaches you how to remember wrong until it feels right. After I left that mirrored chamber, I tried to forget. I really did. I shut down my backup terminal. I disabled the burner phone. I tossed the flash drive into a sealed lockbox and left it in a friend's storage unit under a fake name. But forgetting isn't the same as leaving something behind. The images stayed. The ticking metronome, the reflections that smiled out of sync. The phrase etched into the pedestal, echo room, tempo tier. It looped in my mind like a half-heard jingle you can't shake. So I drove, not back to the estate, somewhere else. There had been a reference in the original schematic to an auxiliary shaft, listed as an early foundation chamber. It wasn't connected to the estate directly. Coordinates placed it about 2 miles out, near a forgotten switchyard built into the hill decades before the mansion existed. Publicly condemned, privately permitted. It was the only place left they hadn't sealed up. The access hatch was buried beneath a rusted ventilation shed behind the old tracks. I had to cut through brush and pry open a latch that had been painted shut years ago. The padlock, though, new, polished, recently oiled. That told me enough. I climbed down into stale dark. The air was wrong from the first step, thick and unmoving, like I was sinking beneath fabric instead of descending into stone. The concrete walls narrowed as I walked, pulling in tighter every 100 feet, lightless, sealed. Just enough space to pass through single file, and every 20 feet I saw the same thing. Hooks, not coat hooks, not rails. Ceiling-mounted metal brackets, empty, but spaced like they once held lighting rigs or mounted gear. One still had fragments of electrical tape curled against it like a long-dried wound. About 300 yards in, the walls began to sweat. Not moisture, condensation maybe, but cold, as if the air itself had memory and was trying to remember how to feel. That's when I found the uniforms. One hung limply from a pipe, faded navy fabric, shoulder crest barely legible. The same crest from the mirrored room videos, the same one drawn into those children's sketches. Another uniform lay flat on a metal bench, perfectly arranged, as though its owner had simply stepped out of it. On top of it, a single child's shoe. No blood, no bodies, just the absence of presence, the echo of preparation. Further in, I reached a wider junction, brick-walled, vaulted ceiling, like a forgotten cathedral of utility tunnels. At the back, covering the far wall, was the mural. Painted with near-religious detail, it showed Oprah, not as herself, but rendered in ceremonial style. Violet robes, arms outstretched, palms turned upward. Surrounding her, dozens of children, each holding a mirror, not facing her, but reflecting light back toward her body. Their reflections formed a ring of light, blinding, sterile. Underneath the mural, etched in red gold paint, he was never the teacher. She was the tempo. The phrase struck me like a blow to the chest, not because I understood it, but because something deep in my gut recognized it before my mind could. Tempo, not teacher, not memory, not even truth. Tempo, rhythm, control, a pattern dictating how thoughts repeat. I moved closer. The mirror fragments in the mural weren't painted. They were real, glazed surfaces polished into the art. My flashlight bounced off them and fractured. And when I leaned in, I saw myself again, but not alone. Behind my reflection was a child, not moving, not blinking, just there, eyes closed, hands on a metronome, ticking. I stepped back, fast. Tucked beneath the mural, behind a loose brick recess, was a wooden crate. Inside were old tapes, sketches, half-shredded documents, and a leather-bound book with no title. I flipped it open. Inside, a list of names, girls, dozens of them, each one assigned a rank: recorder, witness, archive, replacement, repeater, and 2 marked tempo carrier. Only one of those names wasn't crossed out. At the very bottom of the book, written in frantic, shaky handwriting, memory is the rhythm of forgetting. That's why she dances when they speak. I didn't hear the voices at first, only the change in air pressure, like a hush pressing in. Then faintly, softly, names, children's names, recited one by one, not shouted, not cried, just listed, like a roll call. I turned and ran. The voices didn't follow, but the silence after, it stayed. I should have walked away, shut everything down, reported what I could, burned the rest, buried it under excuses. That would have been the sane thing. Instead, I logged back in, not from home. I drove 3 counties over to a private research center I sometimes contract with. Quiet facility, isolated servers, no wireless ports, no cloud sync, just heavy machines that breathe static like they're tired of remembering. I keyed in a false requisition number and opened the encrypted case folder I'd been building behind the scenes. Inside were over 60 flagged anomalies, images, audio loops, architectural plans, and internal memos labeled compliance echo assets. Most of it was background noise, blurry stills from security feeds, corrupted playback timestamps, system logs that ended mid-sentence. But one file had no label, no origin metadata, just a file name, mirror echo dar773a reflect.mp4. I almost didn't open it. The screen glitched as it loaded, flickered twice. And then a hallway, narrow, lined with mirrors. Same structure I'd seen beneath the estate, but this wasn't surveillance footage. This was centered. The moment I stepped out of the echo room, I told myself I was done. But the hallway didn't lead back to the stairwell. It curved, seamlessly, like it had shifted while I was inside. I followed it, flashlight trembling in my grip, until I reached a new room. This one wasn't like the others. It was smaller, square, every wall mirrored, but these weren't passive reflections. These mirrors felt occupied. I inched closer to the far wall. The air was colder here. I couldn't see my own breath, but I felt it tighten in my lungs. Something about these mirrors was wrong. Not because they reflected me out of sync, but because they didn't reflect me at all. They reflected someone else watching. Then the lights dimmed. A low mechanical hum filled the space. From above, a projector clicked on, casting a wide, washed-out beam onto the blank white wall between the mirrors. Static flickered, and then a video began. It was Oprah, but not as the world knows her. No audience, no applause, no kindness in her face, just clinical precision, cold lighting, and commands spoken in a soft, melodic tone that didn't match her eyes. Umbrella, devotion, memory, love, chalice, harvest, duty, mirror, release. The words were spaced, unconnected, but each one triggered a subtle vibration in the room like language itself was pressing into the walls. Behind her in the frame were children, silent, standing in a line, dressed in pale uniforms, eyes unfocused. As each word was spoken, they blinked once, then smiled. It wasn't a performance, it was programming. She paused midway and leaned forward, gaze direct. You do not have to remember, you only have to rehearse. Let the shape hold you. Let the tempo guide you. Let the mirror carry what your soul cannot. More static. Then a final line appeared on the screen, typed in real time. You are now ready to be transported to the school. Your uniform will be waiting for you outside. The projector shut off. The mirrors faded back into passive stillness, but I no longer trusted them to be just glass. I backed away, step by step, until I found the hallway again. I don't remember the walk back, just the sound of my boots on concrete and the phantom echo of those words, nonsense syllables that felt like scripture. Outside, the wind had picked up. My car was covered in leaves. The sky had shifted from late afternoon to near twilight. I checked my watch. It was still the same time. As I slid behind the wheel, I looked down. Folded on the passenger seat, something I hadn't brought in with me. A uniform, my size, perfectly pressed. No note, no seal, just presence. Like a reminder that whatever had watched me in there expected me to come back. I drove for hours that night, past gas stations I couldn't remember stopping at, through towns I didn't recognize. The voice in my head kept repeating the words, mirror, duty, harvest, like they meant something personal, like they were waiting to be unlocked. I wanted to scream. Instead, I pulled over on an old logging road and stared at the sky until the sun began to rise. The truth is, I didn't report anything. I didn't leak it. I didn't even return to the estate. I boxed the flash drives, the sketches, and the uniform and buried them in a storage unit rented under a fake name 3 counties over. For years, I told myself I imagined it, that trauma plays tricks, that maybe I had wanted to believe it was darker than it was, because then at least it had meaning. But mirrors don't lie. They just delay the truth until you're ready to see it. And recently, I saw something online, a channel, this one. People were talking, sharing stories they weren't allowed to tell, about places that looked like the room I was in, about rituals buried under smiles, about children disappearing into systems dressed up as safety. And that's why I'm telling this now. Because if you're watching, and if you've seen anything like what I saw, you know what this is. You've felt it, the hum beneath the words, the way your memory shifts around certain names, the reason you wake up remembering things you never lived and forgetting things you swore you'd never let go. This was my story. It doesn't need your belief. But if you do believe me, if you know something like this is happening or has happened, I'm asking you to help me finish it. There's a link pinned in the comments. Follow it, and maybe together we can finally speak the truth about the demon hidden in the shadow of goodness. Her name is Oprah, and she's still rehearsing.